Okay, folks, today I wanted to bring something that I happened to pick up just very recently and I thought was really, really cool. And the shop I went to had it for a really good price. So, out of a total whim, like a lot of my gun purchases, I decided to pick it up. So, the gun in question we'll be talking about today is this bad boy right here. This is a H&K P30L, or some of you may know it, one of John Wick's basically most used sidearms ever. Especially in, I think in John Wick 1 and 2, P30L was definitely front and center as one of his sidearms of choice. So naturally I wanted one because it's just cool. It's HK, so you know it's going to be good. You might be paying a little bit more, but you know what? It's worth it. So I noticed when I went into the gun shop that day, they had another P30L, but they had the LEM version, which I am not really a fan of. I don't like the LEM version that much. There's a lot of people out there who really, really like LEM, and a lot of people who really don't like LEM. Very rarely do I ever see like a middle ground. It's usually either you love it or you absolutely hate it. I'm firmly in the camp of absolutely hate it because I had my first experience with the LEM trigger system was a P2000 and 9mm, and that thing was absolutely god awful. I hated shooting that gun. Terrible. To be fair though, to the P2000, it was a range rental gun, so maybe it was not as well maintained as it should have been. Because a lot of range rental guns are used and abused and rode hard and put away. In this case, dry. So experiences with LEM triggers have been pretty bad. So I said, hey guy, is it possible for you guys to go to your distributors wherever you get these from and get me a P30 with the correct, better trigger system, but for the same price that you have for this LEM one? And he said, yeah, sure, we can do that. It's just going to take 2 weeks or so. I said, okay, cool. So I get the call and they say, hey, we got the gun in for you. We have it pretty much for the same price. So yeah, you can come in and get it. So I did. Got it for a really good price. I didn't really need this pistol, honestly. I just didn't. But it was available, and these are actually a little bit hard to find now. The P30Ls, anyways, with the rear decocker right there, little button you can see. It's actually a little bit hard to find these things. So I'm glad I was able to scoop one up while I could, because I don't expect to see one of these for a little while. Anyways, so I was really happy too because P30s use the same magazines as VP9s, which is my VP9 right here. And if you guys have watched my other video on the VP9, you know VP9 is one of my most all-time favorite SFPF9s ever, and blows Glock out of the water. It's my competition gun that I like to use for competitions, and they both use the same magazines, which is great because, as anyone knows, HK magazines are notoriously expensive. They are very expensive. So I have a whole stack of magazines just sitting there being ready to be used in the P30. I was like, sweet, awesome. So P30L is a hammer-fired polymer frame 9mm. It uses a similar but not the same system of interchangeable grip panel system here as the VP9. Though I will say, to start off though, the P30L is not just a hammer-fired version of the VP9. The VP9 is actually for all intents and purposes, a completely different gun. And not just because of striker versus hammer fired. One of the most glaring things I noticed is if you look at the back here at the beaver tail on both these guns, the VP9 has a much different cut, a deeper cut to the rear beaver tail there versus this one. Also, the P30 seems a bit chunkier than the VP9. The VP9 is slimmer. It weighs less. It's got a different recoil spring, which I'll get into as well when we go to takedown. They share very similar kind of design lines and kind of front and rear serrations, kind of, they look very similar, but P30 is really closer to the USP or P2000 style of gun than the VP9 is to anything else. So it really, when I took this thing apart on the inside, I was like, wow, the internals reminded me a lot of my USP 45 Tactical, a lot. So yeah, with this one though, the standard model just comes with the the phosphorus sights, something like that. It's not true night sights. It's like a glow in the dark kind of thing. So if you hit it with a bunch of light and let it sit there for a little bit, these little sights here will actually glow for quite a while. So not true night sights, but somewhere in between. I think pretty much all the VP9 standard come with those. So this is, if you ever use the standard VP9 sights, these are the same. So pretty decent quality sights. You know, they're steel, kind of easy to shoot with. They're big dots, but there's no air gaps really in between the sight pictures, so it's pretty tight. Holds 15 rounds in a standard mag, although if you've been paying any kind of attention, HK came out with a recent, newer updated magazine for their VP9s and P30s by extension, which turns these regular size same magazines as from 15 to 17 rounds, because everyone was complaining that, oh, I can't believe I have this full-size pistol, but I only have 15 rounds. Like, come on, right? So HK actually listened for once, although it took them forever, to come out with a 17-shot magazine that fits the exact same profile as the regular 15-rounders. I do not have any 17-rounders because they are eternally out of stock and they are extremely expensive, so I don't really see a big need to replace all my mags with 17-rounders when, honestly, these ones have worked just fine. So we'll go down to takedown here. So this one takes down a little bit differently. There are certain, it's kind of like a 1911 where there's certain notches right there on the slide that you kind of have to hold. You have to hold the slide in a certain position, and then you have to push this cross pin here in so it pops the other side of the slide release out, and you pull that out just enough, but it doesn't come out of the gun. It just pops out a little bit, and then you slide the slide right off. So we'll go ahead and do that, at least the best of my ability to do so. It's a little bit difficult because the recoil spring is pretty strong. It's brand new. That's where you need like 3 hands to do this. I might not be able to get it out. There we go. And then, so you see, it's kind of popped out a little bit there on the side. That's all I need to do. And I have to admit, when I was taking this down the first time, I thought I had broken this thing because this little the slide block release lever had not popped out. Like it only came out this far, but I thought I had to remove it, so I was really tugging on this thing. Like, man, it's in there good. But turns out you're not supposed to remove it. So, but then I kind of expected the whole slide to just slide off, but it wasn't. It was just stuck on there really, really good. No matter what I did, it just didn't want to come off. So I was like, I must be doing something completely wrong with this gun. But no, all it is this thing is just so damn tight to the frame and so new that I really have to wrench and get this thing off. Like I really have to try to get it off. There we go. Ooh. So yeah, there you go. Holy moly, this thing is tight, especially for a freaking polymer frame gun that it's that tight. That's pretty impressive, I gotta say. So the most unique feature of the P30 is this really odd looking recoil spring here. And you can see there's a big old buffer that slides freely on the recoil spring there. And that's what is the unique feature of the P30. A lot of other striker or hammer fired or really any Browning design pistol does not have this kind of buffer spring thing on it. So it's not quite the same as the USP recoil system, which has like 3 recoil springs kind of all interwound in this really cool assembly. This is kind of just a different approach to a recoil spring. And I will say, after shooting this, it definitely does make a difference, but not in the way that I was expecting. So I will also talk about that in a minute. But as you can see in here, the polymer frame is actually kind of sparse. There's not really a whole lot in it. The rail sections are itty bitty teeny tiny, just like a USP. There's barely any material there, but somehow this thing runs like a freaking tank and nothing stops it, which is pretty awesome. I'm sure it's the usual, German space magic that we're just kind of used to at this point. So really, really robust pistol. I mean, this thing has had a lot of service for like police units. I think some militaries have even adopted it. Great pistol. So I don't really need to take the recoil spring out of the barrel because it kind of takes apart like pretty much every other Browning design pistol out there. Not a whole lot to say there. So we'll just get it back together here, or attempt to anyways, because this thing is freakishly tight. More tighter than really any polymer frame pistol has any business being. I mean, not even the VP9 is this tight. There we go. So, how did it shoot? So this is a traditional double DASA gun, so double action, single action pistol, and I have to say from the start, this double action is horrendously heavy. Horrendously. I mean, it's like, you got to put some strength in that to get that double action to go. But it doesn't creep at all. It's not creepy. It's a constant, smooth, straight pull all the way through. And the single action, I have to admit, is very strange. It was a little off-putting at first because I was like, man, this trigger isn't all that great. Especially for an HK gun, I kind of expected a better trigger. But this has a lot to take up. So this is single action right now, and right there, that's the wall. But it doesn't snap cleanly, I guess. It kind of rolls a little bit until it breaks. So maybe I can try to illustrate that here. So I'm pressing. Boom. So you see there's actually a little bit of space from the rear of the frame to where the trigger actually goes back as far as it can. There's still a little bit of space there, so it's a little, it being a polymer trigger, there's a little bit of flex in there. It doesn't quite hit a defined wall after it's done breaking all the way. Not like the P30L, which has the match trigger that has a little thingy on the back of the trigger, like a trigger stop almost, and it stops the trigger from going back and flexing like this one does. So I have to say the single action on this is not the best single action I've fired, but for some reason that I cannot explain, I still shot this pistol extremely accurately, at least for me. The first 200 rounds, I put about 200 rounds through this, my first outing, and the only outing I've shot this so far. About 200 rounds through, all different kinds. So 115s, 124s, 147, steel case, brass case, some NATO, 124 NATO rounds, all kinds of stuff through it. And I was able to achieve, on average, a 2.5 inch group at 25 yards with these pistols, with these sights. Everything bog standard, and I thought that was pretty impressive for a gun that I've never shot before, and with a trigger that many would describe as not being fantastic. I wouldn't say it's bad by any means, but it's serviceable. It fills the role that this was intended to fill, and that was to be a combat sidearm, and it definitely does that job quite well. Now I will say, when I was shooting my groups, I typically shoot groups of 5 for pistols, but the first 3 shots that I shot on my target were always in a very, very small line, all 3 holes basically touching each other in almost a vertical line. And I was very, very happy to see that, but I told myself, you know what, I have to do these 5-shot groups. I don't want to do just 3-shot groups. I need to do 5. I need to be consistent. So I kept myself honest, and I took the next 2 shots, and wouldn't you know it, the next 2 shots were outside of that line and really widened up the group quite a bit to the 2.5, 3-inch groups at 25. And that just broke my heart every time, because I was like, man, there's this really, really nice, clean 3-shot group. The holes are all touching each other. Like, man, I can't get better than that. But I had to keep myself honest. So I will say this pistol is certainly capable of great, awesome accuracy. And the barrel is not your traditional traditional rifling for a barrel. It's the polygonal rifling, so it looks all like smooth on the inside, and it's a lot easier to clean. I tend to prefer the polygonal rifling over traditional rifling because it's easier to clean. Supposedly HK says that it gives the bullets more accuracy because it's like a better seal or something. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't really have a chronograph to test that myself, but I'll take their word on it that is it's a high quality barrel system, certainly higher quality than this VP9. Because the VP9 is traditionally rifled, not polygonal as far as I am aware. So yeah, when shooting this, actually I already covered, the ergonomics are absolutely fantastic because, I mean, this models the VP9, or I should say the VP9 models the P30, very, very closely in terms with the texture, the shape, the finger grooves, the superior paddle magazine style release. Buttons are for the losers. You know, it just freaking fits my hand really good. This gun fits my hand better than, you know, yeah, that whole joke. Excellent ergonomics, and it is in fact truly ambidextrous because the slide lock release lever is here on this side, but it's also on that side. Ooh, fancy. So what I'm able to do with this gun is inertia reload, which is the same thing I can do with the VP9, whereas I have my thumb basically resting right there on the slide lock release lever. When I go to reload, my thumb is resting right here. I put the mag in, and then the force of me bumping it like this is enough to send the slide home and chamber around. So I absolutely love doing that. It's very, very slick. It's very fast. It feels super cool to me. I really, really like doing it. So I'm very happy that this pistol is able to do the same thing as the VP9. So, oh yeah, I also have a decocker button on the back here. I already mentioned that earlier. To me, it's very functional. I don't have any problem with it being the way that it is right there on the back of the slide. You know, it's a decocker, so the need to be fast with it doesn't really matter so much to me, because decocking is an administrative action. So you should have all the time in the world to decock it the way you need it. So it works for me. I don't have an issue with it. It is kind of an odd location to have it on the back of the gun here. I don't know of any other guns that have decockers on the back of the gun, but I've never had any issues with it, so I'm not going to complain about it. What else to say about this? I mean, it's John Wick's pistol for a reason, and I can definitely see why. It certainly gets the job done. It looks cool. It looks very professional. I'm definitely more of a hammer-fired pistol guy myself, so this is a welcome addition to the other hammer-fired pistols that I have. It feels just like a VP9, maybe a little bit chunkier, but that's not a bad thing at all. Trigger is acceptable. I wouldn't say it's great or a match trigger by any means. In fact, I honestly think that the VP9 has a better trigger than this does, at least as far as trying to shoot very small, accurate, tight groups, which is not what this pistol was designed for, so I can't really mash it too much. But that being said, yeah, trigger is serviceable. It's not great, but not bad either. So perfectly designed for what this is intended to be, which is a service sidearm. So, yeah, I mean, there's really no surprises with this thing. It's HK, so you know it's quality. You're definitely paying a little bit more, but you know what? I definitely think it's worth it, and especially for a gun that has such cool factor as a P30L, because it is John Wick's gun. So not only does it fill the cool factor, but it also fills the functional role at the same time and does it very, very well. And that's one thing I really, really like about HK guns, is that they are aesthetically pleasing, but they also work really damn well. So if you can have the best of both worlds, that is to look good and function well at the same time, that is ideal for me, and I am certainly happy with what I have here. And definitely a worthy sidearm for people looking to get one of these, or any P30 really, or any HK pistol. I've never seen a bad HK pistol except maybe the P2000 LEM, but that's just the trigger system, it's not the gun itself. But anyway, maybe someday I'll get a P2000 because you know, I like Counter-Strike, so I kind of want to get you know, I like getting guns from video games that I enjoy, so at someday I probably will get a P2000. But for the time being, this P30L is definitely an awesome piece. I love it. I think it's great. I wish there were more of them out there. People don't seem to realize that these things even exist. They're kind of hard to find, especially the L model. The regular P30s are certainly out there, and the P30SKs are certainly out there as well, but the P30Ls are a little bit harder to find. So, but they are still making them. They are not discontinued because the date code on this one says this was made in 2020. I think January of 2020. So they are definitely still making these. So yeah, if you guys come across one for a good price, I really don't think you can go wrong. It all depends on how much you're willing to pay for one of these things and how much the HK name actually means to you. To me, I know it's a very, very good brand, and I will admit you are paying a little bit for the name, but you know, it's worth it to me. So yeah, really, really good pistol. I like it a lot, and definitely recommend for people that, you know, that don't really know anything about these guns and kind of wanted to get a solid look at them and everything. And yeah, I hope I covered all my bases there, but yeah, there's not really anything negative to say about this gun. So yeah, really, really cool piece. Definitely recommend it, and yeah, we'll catch you next time. One thing I forgot to mention actually about the recoil spring in this. So what I wanted to describe the I guess the recoil impulse of this gun is out of all the loads that I used, 115 grains, 124s, 124 NATOs, 147 grains, and then some defensive like plus P stuff, is regardless of the load that I shot, all of the recoil impulse felt pretty much exactly the same. There was no noticeable increase in like muzzle flip or perceived recoil on my end. It, regardless of the load, it all felt the same. Now, that is to say though, with the 115 grains, normally those tend to be a little bit more of a muted kind of feel. They're not as powerful. They don't kick as much as like the 124s, and definitely not as much as the 124 NATOs and some of the 147s out there. So like in the VP9, shooting 115s out of this feels definitely a lot softer than the other loads, but that certainly was not the case with the P30, because for some odd reason, however that recoil spring system works, it just made all of the loads feel the same. But the 115s did not feel especially soft for a 115. All of it was like, I guess on the level of like Recoil Impulse, you'd have 115s at the very bottom, and some of the 147s here at the very top. Right underneath that would be the 124 NATOs, and then underneath that would be the 124 commercials. The Recoil Impulse was somewhere between the 115s and the 124 commercial loads, somewhere like right in the middle there. All of the loads were right there at that level of Recoil Impulse, and regardless of what I did, how I held it, what I shot, it was all right there at that Recoil Impulse. So I thought that was pretty neat, because no other pistol I've shot has had that kind of consistency as far as Recoil Impulse, and I bet it has something to do with that buffer that's sitting in there. I don't know. That's more technical knowledge stuff that I just don't have. So however it works, I think it's pretty nifty. It's pretty cool. So in my opinion, no matter what you fire out of that pistol, it's pretty much all going to feel the same. So why not use the higher power loads, right? So I will probably be feeding a somewhat steady diet of 124 NATOs out of this pistol, because as it turns out, for some reason, a lot of the European pistols I have shoot a lot better with 124 grain and 124 grain NATO loads. I don't know why, they just seem to like it. So yeah, I just wanted to include that little note in there. I forgot about it in the original video, so I will be amending this at the end. So yeah, so for real this time, we'll catch you next time.